you so much for joining us today on Halloween. We have a very exciting show today. We are going to be telling some spooky, scary tales from the Northside. These are true, scary stories that happened right here in Finglas and Ballymun and all around us. So, I hope you're ready. Get settled in, because we're about to tell some tales from the Northside. Are you ready for another tale from the Northside? This story happened not too far from where we are right now. This is the tale of the cursed community garden. There were 3 children, Damien, Alex, and Jessie. Damien, Alex, and Jessie were best friends. They lived on the same street. They used to go out and play all their favourite games. Kick the can, football, you name it, they played it. They loved an adventure. So one Halloween, they were hanging around, waiting for something to happen. Oh, it wasn't quite time to put their costumes on yet. It wasn't time to go around the houses and ask for sweets. So they were a bit fed up. Jessie's mum said to the 3 of them, "Get out of my kitchen. Why don't you go up to the community garden and hang around there? They're always looking for help with the, the pumpkins that they're growing." So the 3 kids set off. When they got to the community garden though, it was all locked up. "It's so weird," says Alex. "There's always people here volunteering and helping out." They shook the gate, but it was locked. So they turned around to head home. Just at that moment, they heard an as the gate began to swing open. The 3 friends looked at each other. They knew they weren't really supposed to go into the community garden if there were no grown-ups around. But at the same time, there were no grown-ups around. So who was going to stop them? The 3 of them snuck in past the rusty old gate and into the community garden. Now, if you've never been to the community garden, it's fantastic. They grow all vegetables there. They even grow grapes and fruit. The kids love to go down and help out with digging and planting and to sit around and taste all the new foods that have grown there. But today, on Halloween, it seemed different. It was a very dark, windy day. The wind was howling so loudly it almost sounded like crying. They thought that they could hear a voice. "Boo hoo, boo hoo." "Oh, I don't like this," Jessie said, and she felt like turning around and going home. "No, come on," said Alex. "Come on," said Damien. "Let's go in and have a look." Soon they realised there was a volunteer in the garden. They could see a woman not too far away. So they walked up towards us. "Here, missus, do you need any help?" said Damien. And the woman turned around. But she wasn't a woman. She was a ghost. Her skin and hair were white and see-through. The 3 children were stopped in absolute fear looking at her. "Oh no," said the woman. "Why did you come here? Why did you come here?" The kids were getting really scared now, so they started to run towards the gate. But as they run towards the gate seemed to get further and further away, stretching out in front of them. "You shouldn't have come here," they heard the woman behind them. "Now you're cursed too." This woman was a witch, known as Winnie, who had worked in the garden for years and years. Winnie used to grow all her magical herbs and plants to help people there in the garden. But what they didn't know was that up on top of a nearby hotel lived a vampire named Vlad. And Vlad used to sit there on his own, and he had fallen in love with Winnie. He would watch her as she made medicine to help people, as she created new dinners that would cheer people up, and as she spread all the good throughout the community. Vlad was an angry, lonely vampire, didn't know anyone, wasn't part of the community at all. And his love started to bubble up and fester inside inside his heart, so he placed a terrible curse on the garden. On Halloween, whoever stepped through the great gates would be trapped there forever. So, one Halloween, Winnie had gone in just to pick some pumpkins to take with her to the Halloween party. But the minute she stepped through, she felt something happen. Her fingers and hands began to disappear. She felt herself get cold and lonely, and she knew then, because she was a witch, that she would never leave the garden again. And so Vlad had Winnie trapped where he could watch her. And Winnie was stuck in the garden forever, watching people come in and helping the community, but never able to leave. Winnie told the children this sad, sad story. That is not fair, said Jessie. You should be able to leave. Come on, said Alex. There has to be a way we can get you out of here. So the three children thought for a few minutes. Vlad, they called. Vlad, we summon you. And they called the vampire down from the top of the hotel. He was very annoyed. He was tall and skinny and creepy with long fingers and an angry face. Who do you think you are, summoning me, the great Vlad the vampire? He said to the children. We think you need to let Winnie go. Why should I let Winnie go? Winnie stepped out from behind the kids. Because, Vlad, she said, I'd like to go on a date with you. Vlad stopped. A little bit of pinkness flushed across his cheeks. A date with me? Yes, Vlad, said Winnie. I always liked you. I know that not many witches and vampires go on dates, but I would have gone on one if you just asked me. You didn't need to trap me here in this garden. Oh, I feel very embarrassed now, said Vlad. Well, will you lift the curse? Said Winnie. Really, please, said Alex, because we need to go trick-or-treating very soon. Okay, I'll lift the curse, said Vlad, and he closed his eyes and he muttered magic words. And as he did, the children could feel life come back into them and into the garden and into Winnie, and suddenly there they were, 4 solid people in the bright community garden and 1 vampire. They walked happily out of the garden, and Vlad said to Winnie, would you like a lift? And he took her hand, and the two of them flew off to head off on their spooky date. Jessie said, I don't really think she should have gone on a date with him, to be honest. People who trap you in gardens aren't good boyfriends. Alex and Damien looked at each other and they had to agree. Not the best. But I heard Winnie and Vlad were the happiest couple in the world. Winnie helped Vlad stop being so angry, and Vlad went down and helped Winnie in the garden. And together they were able to create some of the best potions the community had ever seen. And as for the 3 best friends, well, let's just say that wasn't their last Halloween adventure that night. They got plenty of sweets, plenty of spooks, and plenty of scares. Hello, and welcome back to Tales of the Northside, spooky, scary stories from around the north side of Dublin. This story happened one Halloween night. A brother and a sister, Ger and Harry, were getting ready to go out knocking around the houses and looking for sweets. Ger was dressed up in a princess dress, but scary, and Harry was dressed up like a pirate, but dead. They would knock around the houses, and sometimes they would say, help the Halloween party. Other times they would say, Bob no bia. But most of the time, they'd knock on the door and say, trick or treat. Some of the houses they passed were dark and empty, and there was nobody inside to give you any sweets. Other houses had spooky ghouls and ghosts in the windows, and families inside with big bowls full of Kit Kats or Mars bars or apples or monkey nuts that they would hand out to everyone. Some of the houses even had these projections that made it look like ghosts were outside the buildings. "Look at that house down there," Ger said, pointing towards the end of the road. "That house looks like it has brilliant sweets." They set off towards it. It was decorated so well, but it didn't look spooky at all. It looked almost like a chocolate factory. There were big sherbet lemons wrapped up in the garden and lollipops as big as your head. The front door was a giant stinger bar. "Oh, I can't wait. We're going to get brilliant sweets here," Ger said. But Harry had this bad feeling in his stomach. He tried to remember something. A story? What was it? He just knew something wasn't right about this house. "Come on, Harry, hurry up," Ger said as she began to knock on the door. And the big stinger door swung open. Inside was a very glamorous woman. She had red lipstick and fangs, a little bit of blood, and she was dressed up like the bride of Dracula. "Trick or treat," Ger said, holding out her bag, ready for sweets. But Harry felt that bad feeling inside him again. What was he trying to remember? "Oh, wow, don't you look fabulous," the woman said. "What amazing costumes you both have. You deserve an extra special sweet treat. Why don't you come into the kitchen with me? I have something really nice in the oven." Harry really didn't feel good about this. Oh no, what should they do? He just wanted to leave, but Ger was already saying, "Yes, please," and going into the woman's house. "No, Ger, we're not supposed to go into a stranger's house," Harry said. "Well, I'm staying here," and he crossed his arms and stood there in the garden. Ger didn't seem to hear, and the door swung shut behind her as she followed the woman into the kitchen. Harry stood there thinking. They had done a lot of stories in school, and he knew this reminded him of one of them. Was it Goldilocks and the Three Bears? No, it wasn't. Was it, Little Red Riding Hood? No, Then he remembered Hansel and Gretel. Hansel and Gretel got lost in the woods, and they found a house made out of sweets. And the woman inside turned out to be a witch who wanted to put them in the oven. And now Ger was inside in this woman's kitchen. Oh, bad feeling or no bad feeling, Harry was going in there. Absolutely nobody was going to put his sister in their oven and eat her. So he banged that stinger door wide open. He marched straight into the kitchen. "Don't eat my sister," he said. The woman and Ger looked very surprised. Ger was sitting on the table, munching on a brand new biscuit, and the woman was reaching inside the oven to take a tray of biscuits out. "What?" said Ger. But it was too late. Harry grabbed her hand and took her, running from the building. "Run, Ger," he said. "Run all the way home. We can never go back to that house. That witch was going to eat you." The woman followed them, watching closely, as Ger and Harry ran all the way home. "It's never a trick or treat for me," she said. "I'll try again next Halloween." And she shut the door behind her. This tale is another dark tale from the Northside. It was told to me by my dad, and it was told to him by his dad. This is the story of the scary cemetery. One night, my granddad was walking home from work, and it was very, very dark, and it was rainy, and it was cold, and he really didn't feel like going the whole way home. But he missed the last bus, and he didn't have a bike, so it looked like he had to walk. Now, he could take a shortcut that would make the walk much shorter if he just snuck through the graveyard. He didn't normally like to do this, especially on a night like tonight when there was a big full moon and it was lashing rain, but he was so cold and so wet that he decided to do it. So he opened the gate into the graveyard and he stepped in. The minute he stepped in, he started to feel a little bit frightened, and he was sure he could hear something like a banshee's call. Have you ever heard of the banshee? Ban means woman, and she means fairy, Oscuelga. The banshee was supposed to be a woman fairy who would cry out and predict when people in families were supposed to die. So it was said that there were certain families that banshees were connected with. Some were connected with the O'Brien family, and they would call out to warn when a member of the family was supposed to die. But other people said that if you heard a banshee crying, that meant you would die before the sun came up. Now, I don't think that's true, and I don't think we need to worry about that too much. But my granddad, he did think that was true. So he heard a terrible scream like a "ah!" and he was terrified. The banshee! He was sure he had heard her. And now, what would happen to him? Before the sun would come up, he would surely die. So he kept walking through the graveyard, but it was really dark and he could feel himself tripping over things. But behind him, he could hear something worse. It sounded like the rattle of chains. Ghosts. Now, back then, people used to say that you got chains put on you for every bad thing that you did. And if you were bad, the chains would wrap around you and you would walk the earth as a ghost, rattling and rattling the chains everywhere you went. Now, I don't think that's true, but my granddad did. And this really scared him. Now he was afraid there was a banshee out there and there was a ghost rattling chains. Then, just to make matters worse, he started to hear a clip, clop, clip, clop, like horses' hooves. Now, have you heard of the ghost carriage? A ghost carriage, they used to say, was pulled by horses, and it would come along and take you all the way to hell. Oh, the ghost carriage was supposed to be one of the scariest things. A phantom carriage with no driver, just a ghost at the front. And now my poor granddad, walking through the graveyard, could hear the ghost carriage, the clip, clop approaching him. So not only was he afraid because he could hear the banshee screaming, but he could hear the ghosts rattling their chains as they walked the earth for all the bad things they had done. And now, worst of all, the ghost carriage was coming to get him, to take him all the way to hell. Oh, he was so scared. Oh, he rummaged around in his bag until he could light a match and try and get a little bit of light. And he did, as he heard the clip-clop getting closer, and he lit the match, and what did he see? It was a donkey. There was a donkey walking through the graveyard, and the donkey had a long chain around his neck. So he hadn't heard the scream of the banshee at all. He had heard the ee-ah of the donkey, and he hadn't heard ghosts wrapped in chains. He had heard the chain that the donkey was tied up with, and he hadn't heard the clip-clop of a really scary ghost carriage. Oh no, that was the donkey's hooves. My poor granddad was so embarrassed. He was scared of anything, of a poor old donkey. He happily gave the donkey a pat on the head, wrapped himself up against the rain and the wind, followed that bright moon all the way home. And you know what? He never took a shortcut through the cemetery ever again. The end.